I'm Ryan Consell, author, game developer, and costumer.
I've read that you refer to yourself as a nerd culture activist. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of what you mean by that?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I am a nerd culture activist in that I believe that the nerd movement needs visibility and people espousing the great things about it to let people sort of come out of their shells and their closets. There are a lot of nerds that are still just as closeted as some of the gay and the trans communities, and just letting people know that they can be nerd about everything they want to be, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And how do you feel like you're active? Like, how do you contribute in your activisms? How would you say that you do that? Is it within your cosplay, within your writings?
I try to do it in every aspect of my life. I try to contribute to the just producing an environment where people feel comfortable to come out and celebrate the things that they love. I help run something called Nerd Night in my local town, which is actually in most major cities across the globe now, and it's just a celebration of things that people are nerdy about. On my blog, I talk about some of the problems with nerd culture and some of the discrimination and judgment that goes on, but also some of the great things we're doing, sort of tear apart movies and how they mess things up.
Perfect. All right, so going back to your book, we haven't talked about that. Do you want to tell us about How to Poach a Unicorn?
I would love to tell you about How to Poach a Unicorn. It is my first novel. It is a fantasy fiction novel, a romp, sort of lighthearted romp across a continent to save a kingdom from imminent destruction. And it is brilliant in every possible way, but I also learned a lot writing it. The process of developing it and then a lot of the feedback that I got afterwards sort of led me to the path of realizing that activism needed to be done. I sort of grew up believing that feminist issues had been dealt with and we were good because everybody around me was. But then hitting the broader audience and realizing, no, there's still a lot of fights that are going on and a lot of things that people know and a lot of misconceptions that I, as well as the rest of my sort of middle-class white male community has, needs a bit of work, a little encouragement in some more positive directions.
Well, you certainly have a strong voice in your writing. Actually, I finished Thor is a Lady. Let's complain about it. So it was a good article.
Thank you.
And there's a couple of things about it I wanted to discuss. First of all, in terms of costuming, do you prefer a more historically accurate, when especially within comics, or are you okay with some creative, leverage or?
Oh no, costuming. So the costuming I do, I like to do metalworking in sort of a historically realistic fashion, and I hit metal with a hammer. But I don't expect other people to do that. Everybody celebrates their costumes in their own way. And when you're designing a costume for a comic book, I don't expect you to be historically accurate, but when you're not, that gives us something to talk about. So we can talk about with Thor becoming a woman is like, well, what does that costume say about her? The way that they've put it together, is this creating a strong character? Is it creating another damsel? Is she gonna get fridged? And I think, broadly speaking, that they did pretty well with the Thor costume redesign. We'll have to see what the story ends up being.
That is true.
Whether or not that helmet breaks her nose bone, but totally separate issues.
You definitely were deconstructing it. It was very detailed, so that was good. And then, do you also maybe want to comment a little bit about, something like that, Thor being a woman with Marvel, this being the right step for the right direction for female representation? Are we seeing more of that, do you think, or is it still a really slow and staggered process?
It is a staggered process, I think is a good word for it. It kind of goes in leaps and trips and jumps. I think that they are trying, which I am going to applaud. One of the problems with trying to create good women characters in fiction, or good female characters in fiction, if we want to be grammatically correct, is that we don't have a lot of examples to go off of. So even when somebody goes out and goes, all right, let's make an honest effort and go strong female character, good story, good representation, they don't know what to do, and they tend to screw up anyway because we don't have eons of great literature to pull from. All of those great ones have been men because history.
Well, that's how it is. But, again, we're working on it, right?
So I have my fingers crossed.
So As do I. Fingers, toes, everything. So let's talk about getting groped.
Oh, yeah, that was new.
Yeah. Do you want to just speak to that experience with, you don't have to name where you were, but.
Yeah, I will avoid names to embarrass people, but this lovely costume, is sort of my first foray into being a sexy figure anywhere in my life.
Now, do you come from this as a, as a male cosplayer? Because there isn't a lot of sexy male cosplayers, generally. So how did you come to?
Well, I've cosplayed before, and I get a lot of great feedback, great costume, and people sort of celebrate that. But the idea of being sexualized to the point of being yanked on, actually my collar is broken because of a lady or three, now it's had a couple of repairs, not thinking of what they were doing and yanking on the chain. And thinking that this is going to be like great and awesome and come hither sexual, and usually moments later realizing what they've done. But as a guy going into that situation, getting felt up and getting my chest hair ruffled, that was something I'd never experienced before, and it suddenly gave me a perspective of what women are putting up with all the time. And realizing that even in that situation, there's somebody yanking on my chain and ruffling my chest hair, I could make that stop. I am still in a position of power. I could overpower the situation, and be done. And it just gave me a sudden and very depressing realization as to when the situation gets flipped, how very different the world is.
It's inspiring that you wrote about it, though, with such honesty. Did you feel that the feedback from that article specifically was well received, or were you given any slack?
I have gotten no slack whatsoever. I've gotten a few people giving minor additions and corrections and going, but more than anything I get people coming and saying thank you for writing that. I have people that I couldn't imagine having ever read that article coming and thanking me for having shared that experience, partly because it's sometimes useful to have the sort of dumb white guy voice, because I can speak to my own people a little bit better than maybe a woman having the same experience could, and go, no guys, no, they're not lying. This is real, and it sucks.
It's true. Well, I think that just even having the costumes are not, costumes aren't consent?
Costumes are not consent.
Thank you.
Those signs are excellent.
Absolutely.